Your work is impressive, Riley, but we're making a change. My son will take over your accounts, Gerald announced, staring me down across the glass conference table. He's more qualified. The quarterly report lay between us, a testament to the $2 million in revenue I generated single-handedly this quarter. 3 years of missed dinners, canceled weekends, and endless late nights building relationships from nothing. More qualified? I managed to ask, keeping my voice steady despite the shock. Gerald waved his hand dismissively, gold cufflinks catching the light. Preston has the right background. The clients will respond better to him. What he meant was clear. Clients would prefer a man. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of 30 pairs of eyes from around the table. My colleagues' faces showed a mix of shock, pity, and, from a few, poorly disguised satisfaction. 3 years of outperforming everyone in the room, and this was my reward. Of course, I said with a smile that required every ounce of my self-control. I understand. The words tasted bitter. I'd just closed the Anderson deal, the largest in company history. I'd flown to 12 cities in 14 days to make it happen. Meanwhile, Preston had been with the company all of 6 months, hired directly as a senior manager despite having zero industry experience. Excellent, Gerald said, turning to address the room. Preston will assume control of all Riley's accounts effective next Monday. Riley will assist with the transition for 2 weeks, then move to support our smaller regional clients. Regional clients. A demotion so severe it might as well come with a cardboard box for my belongings. As the meeting concluded, I felt my phone vibrate. A text from Danny in accounting. Meet me in the parking garage. Level 3. 20 minutes later, I sat in Danny's car, finally letting the tears flow. He can't do this, Danny insisted, passing me tissues. The Anderson deal alone should have earned you a promotion, not this. I wiped my eyes. Apparently, being the daughter of working-class parents instead of a legacy graduate makes me less qualified. Danny hesitated. There's something you should know about Preston. That's when she showed me the expense reports. Client dinners where alcohol costs exceeded food by thousands. Hotel charges in cities where we had no clients. And something more disturbing, receipts doctored, numbers changed, signatures that didn't match. I flagged these 3 times, Danny whispered. Gerald overrode my concerns each time. I stared at the screen, a plan slowly forming in my mind. Can you send me copies of these? Danny looked nervous. That would violate company policy. So does nepotism, I replied quietly. If you're invested in seeing how Riley handles this unfair situation, please hit like and subscribe to catch the full story. Your comments mean everything. Let me know if you've ever faced workplace injustice like this. I'm Riley Marsh, 32, the daughter of a nurse and a factory worker who taught me that nothing worth having comes without effort. I put myself through college with 3 part-time jobs and graduated top of my class, only to be told repeatedly that I lacked experience. When I finally landed my position at Viewpoint Enterprises, I worked twice as hard as everyone else, just to be considered half as good. My apartment is a minimalist dream, not by choice, but because I'm rarely home to enjoy it. My social life consists of client meetings and the occasional drink with Danny, my only true ally at work. My last relationship ended when my boyfriend gave me an ultimatum, him or the job. I chose the career that I'd sacrificed everything to build. The next morning, I arrived at work an hour early, as usual. The office was quiet, except for the hum of the cleaning crew's vacuums. I brewed coffee in the break room, mentally preparing for my first encounter with Preston since yesterday's announcement. He strolled in at 9:45, coffee cup from the expensive place down the street in hand, designer briefcase swinging carelessly at his side. His eyes found me across the open office. Riley, just the person I wanted to see, he called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. Let's have a quick chat about my accounts. My accounts. Already. I followed him to what would soon be his office, the corner space I'd been promised after the Anderson deal. So, Preston began, dropping into the chair and propping his feet on the desk. Dad says you'll be bringing me up to speed on everything. I need all client contacts, meeting notes, and strategies by end of day. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. I can prepare those files. Great. Also, I'm thinking of taking Anderson to dinner next week to solidify the relationship. What's his wife's name again? Is she hot? I froze. Excuse me? Preston laughed. Relax. Just guy talk. But seriously, what's she like? Mrs. Anderson is the CFO of their company, I said carefully. She handled most of the negotiations for their deal. Preston's smile faltered. Oh, Well, that explains why it took so long to close. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Anyway, he continued, I'm thinking of restructuring the approach with them. Less hand-holding, more aggressive growth strategies. They specifically chose us because we don't use aggressive tactics, I said. They had bad experiences with their previous provider. Preston waved his hand dismissively, exactly like his father. Trust me, I know how to handle these people. These people, the phrase echoed in my head as I left his office. These people who represented $2 million in business. These people who had trusted me with their accounts after years of building relationships. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my apartment, replaying the events of the past 2 days. Around 2 a.m., I opened my laptop and began typing. Not a resignation letter, something else entirely. The next morning, I called Liz Anderson. Riley, how are you? Walter and I were just talking about the fantastic job you did on our rollout. I took a deep breath. Liz, I need to tell you something. The company is making some changes to account management. Changes? What kind of changes? Starting next week, Preston Wilson will be handling your account. Silence. Then, Preston Wilson, Gerald's son, the one who cornered me at the industry mixer? My heart skipped. You remember him? Remember him? Riley. The man asked if my husband lets me make financial decisions while staring at my chest. It took every ounce of professionalism I have not to make a scene. I closed my eyes, remembering how I'd had to extract Preston from several similar situations that night. I didn't know if I should mention it to you, Liz continued. I know how important the relationship is between our companies. It is important, I agreed, which is why I wanted to give you a heads up about the transition. Liz's voice turned serious. Riley, I don't mean to overstep, but our contract specifies you as our account manager. If that changes, we would need to reassess our position. Hope flickered inside me. The contract does specify me by name, doesn't it? Absolutely. Walter insisted on it. We're working with Viewpoint because of you, not despite you. After ending the call, I checked the Anderson contract. There it was, in black and white. Riley Marsh shall serve as primary account manager for the duration of services rendered. I spent the rest of the day making calls, not to complain, but to listen. 5 more clients, 5 more conversations that confirmed what I already suspected. Preston had a history with each of them, missed deadlines, inappropriate comments, inflated promises. For the next week, I played along. I prepared transition documents, sat through meetings where Preston interrupted me constantly with, what Riley is trying to say is, while clients exchanged uncomfortable glances, I smiled and nodded and counted the hours. Then came the board meeting, the quarterly review, where Gerald planned to officially announce the transition to all senior leadership and board members. I arrived early, set up my laptop, and waited. Gerald entered with Preston at his side, both in matching navy suits. The board members filtered in, followed by the executive team. 16 people who would decide my fate without knowing the full story. Before we begin, Gerald announced once everyone was seated. I'd like to formally introduce my son Preston, who will be taking over management of our premier accounts, including the Anderson portfolio that has been so successful this quarter. Several heads nodded. A few murmurs of congratulations. Preston has the education and instincts to take these relationships to new heights, Gerald continued proudly. I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. A text from the lobby security desk. Your guests have arrived. The moment I'd been planning for all week was here. I raised my hand. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Before we continue with today's agenda, I believe there's a relevant matter we should address. Gerald shot me a warning look. Riley, we have a full schedule. Any concerns you have can be addressed after the transition is complete. The chairman, Lloyd, a silver-haired man who rarely spoke at these meetings, studied my face. What's the matter about, Riley? Client satisfaction, I said simply. Given that we're discussing a major change to our premier account management, I thought it might be valuable to hear directly from those affected. Gerald's posture stiffened. That's not necessary. The board doesn't need to be bothered with operational details. Actually, Lloyd countered, client feedback is always relevant to board discussions. He nodded toward me. Please proceed. I stood. With your permission, I've invited representatives from several of our key accounts to share their perspectives on this transition. Gerald's face reddened. This is highly irregular and unprofessional. You had no authority to. The boardroom door opened, and Marcy, the receptionist, appeared. Excuse me, there are several clients here who say they were invited to speak with the board. Lloyd looked surprised but intrigued. Send them in. What happened next would forever be seared into my memory. Liz Anderson walked in first, followed by representatives from 5 other major clients, together accounting for over 70% of our company's revenue. The room fell silent as they filed in and stood along the wall. Preston's confident smirk faltered. Gerald looked like he might explode. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, standing so quickly his chair rolled backward. Lloyd held up his hand. "I'd like to hear what our clients have to say." Liz stepped forward, commanding the room in her tailored suit. When Riley called to inform me about the management change, I felt it was important to speak directly with leadership. Our company signed with Viewpoint specifically because of Riley's approach and expertise. Tony from Beacon Technologies nodded. "Same here. Riley built our integration from the ground up. She knows our systems, our team, our goals, and our contract," added Liz, explicitly names Riley as our account manager. Several board members exchanged glances. Gerald attempted to regain control. "I appreciate your loyalty to Riley, but I assure you Preston is exceptionally qualified. He has an MBA from—" "I've met Preston," Liz interrupted, her voice cool but firm. "At the Wilson Industry Mixer last month." Preston shifted uncomfortably. "He approached me at the bar," Liz continued, already intoxicated, "and asked if my husband lets me make financial decisions while staring at my chest. When I informed him I was the CFO, he laughed and said I didn't look like a numbers person." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Every eye turned to Preston, who had gone pale. "That's not. I was just making conversation," he stammered. Tony stepped forward. During his summer training period, Preston was assigned to our account briefly. He missed 2 critical deadlines and blamed Riley's team. We later discovered he never filed the paperwork. One by one, each client shared similar experiences: missed meetings, inappropriate comments, promises made without consultation, blame shifted, always with Riley left to repair the damage afterward. I hadn't coached them. I hadn't needed to. I'd simply asked if they would share their honest experiences with the board regarding the proposed transition. Gerald's complexion had moved from red to almost purple. "This is a setup. Riley obviously manipulated these statements to undermine my son." Liz raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Wilson, I run a $500 million company. Nobody manipulates me." The chairman looked troubled. "Gerald, these are serious concerns from our most valuable clients. We've drafted a joint statement," Tony said, placing a document on the table. "If leadership changes as proposed, we'll need to reevaluate our relationships with Viewpoint. In other words, we'll take our business elsewhere." Preston stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. Dad, are you going to let them talk about me this way?" His outburst hung in the air like a confession. Lloyd picked up the document, scanned it, then passed it around the table. "I think we need to reconsider this transition plan immediately." Gerald sputtered. "This is my department. I make personnel decisions based on qualifications and merit." "Merit?" I couldn't stop myself. "I've generated $2 million this quarter alone. I've never missed a deadline. I've grown every account assigned to me. What metrics are you using to determine merit, Gerald?" The room fell silent again. I'd never addressed him by his first name in a professional setting. Lloyd cleared his throat. "I think we should take a brief recess. Clients, thank you for your candor. Board members, let's reconvene in 30 minutes. Gerald, Preston, my office, please." As everyone filed out, Danny caught my eye from where she'd been sitting against the wall taking financial notes for the meeting. She gave me a subtle thumbs up. I spent the recess in the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face, trying to calm my racing heart. I'd shown my hand. There was no going back now. When we reconvened, Preston and Gerald were noticeably absent. Lloyd called the meeting to order. "After consultation with several board members, we've made some immediate changes," he announced. "Riley will retain management of all her current accounts. Preston will be reassigned to our training program, where he'll have the opportunity to develop his skills appropriately." Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. "And Gerald?" someone asked. "Gerald has agreed to take a 2-week leave while we review certain concerns that have come to light." My stomach tightened. This wasn't over. After the meeting, Lloyd asked me to stay behind. "That was quite a display," he said once we were alone. "I apologize for the disruption," I said carefully, "but I couldn't stand by while years of client relationships were jeopardized." Lloyd studied me. "No apology needed. What you did took courage. But Gerald has many friends on the board and in the industry. He won't take this lightly." "I understand. Do you? Because what happens next could define your career." I met his gaze steadily. "With all due respect, sir, What happened today already defined my career. I chose my clients over office politics. A small smile crossed his face. Indeed, you did. He paused. There's something else you should know. The board has been concerned about some financial irregularities. Nothing concrete, just patterns that don't quite add up. My conversation with Danny flashed through my mind. The expense reports, the doctored receipts. What kind of patterns? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Client billing discrepancies, expense report anomalies. Lloyd shrugged. Could be nothing. Could be something. Hard to investigate when the person in question is so protected. He was fishing, seeing if I knew anything. That sounds concerning, I said carefully. Lloyd nodded. Yes, especially with our annual audit coming up next month. He stood, signaling our conversation was ending. You've shown loyalty to the company today, Riley. Remember that loyalty should be rewarded, not punished. As I walked back to my desk, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Parking garage, level 3. Now, I found Gerald waiting beside his luxury sedan, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. You think you're clever, he hissed as I approached, turning my clients against me. I didn't turn anyone against you, I replied, keeping my distance. They formed their own opinions based on their experiences. This isn't over, he warned. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I built this company from nothing, and I built those client relationships from nothing, I countered, while you were taking 3-hour lunches and planning Preston's career path. His eyes narrowed. You're fired. You don't have that authority right now, I reminded him. The board placed you on leave. Temporary setback, he snarled. When I return, you'll be the first to go, and I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. I should have been terrified. Gerald Wilson had connections everywhere, but something had shifted inside me. I was done being afraid. Why do you hate me so much? I asked quietly. Is it because I'm good at my job, or because I'm not a man? I don't hate you, he scoffed. I just know your type. Clawed your way up from nothing, chip on your shoulder, thinking you deserve special treatment. Special treatment? I just wanted fair treatment. Gerald stepped closer. Listen carefully. Back down now. Apologize to Preston. Tell the board you overreacted, and maybe, I'll let you keep your job in a reduced capacity. I looked at him, really looked at him. The expensive suit that couldn't quite hide his paunch, the dyed hair, the manicured nails. A man who'd been coasting on past achievements for years while others did the real work. No, I said simply. His face contorted. You'll regret this. I promise you that. As he got into his car, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The battle lines were drawn. Gerald thought he held all the power, but he had no idea what was coming next. That night, I called Danny. You were amazing today, she gushed. The look on Preston's face when Liz Anderson started talking. It's not over, I warned her. Gerald threatened me in the parking garage. Danny's voice turned serious. That's not surprising, but it might be useful. How so? Because now we know he's desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. I hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning in my mind all day. Those expense reports you showed me? How bad is it? Really? There was a long pause before Danny answered. Riley, what I'm about to tell you could get us both fired. Maybe worse. It's not just altered receipts, Danny said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've found a pattern going back 3 years. Client invoices inflated above contracted rates with the difference diverted elsewhere. Company resources used for personal ventures. Travel expenses for trips that never happened. My mind raced. How much are we talking about? At least $800,000 that I can trace. Possibly more. The number struck me like a physical weight. Have you told anyone? I tried. Twice. The first time, I was told I misunderstood the accounting procedures. The second time, I was removed from those accounts and given a verbal warning about overstepping. I paced my apartment, thoughts whirling. Gerald has to know the annual audit is coming up. That's just it, Danny said. Last week, he pushed through a change in auditing firms, switched to a smaller company, where his college roommate is a partner. A knot formed in my stomach. So, he's covering his tracks. Trying to. But I've been keeping separate records for months. Every discrepancy, every override, every unusual transaction, I just never knew what to do with them. I stopped pacing. Send them to me. All of it. Riley, this is serious. If Gerald finds out, he already wants me gone, I reminded her. What's he going to do? Fire me twice? After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table until dawn, poring over the files Danny sent. The scale of Gerald's financial manipulation was breathtaking. Not just padding expense accounts, but systematically siphoning money through fake vendors, ghost employees, and inflated client billing. And Preston wasn't just an entitled nepotism case. He was part of the scheme. Several of the shell companies receiving payments had been registered in his name, the most recent one just 3 months ago. By morning, I had a plan, a dangerous one. The next 2 weeks passed in tense anticipation. I performed my duties perfectly, rebuilding trust with clients who'd been rattled by the attempted transition. I attended every meeting, filed every report on time, and kept my head down. On the surface, everything was back to normal, but beneath, currents were moving. I met with Lloyd twice more, each time sharing another piece of what Danny had discovered, careful to protect her as the source. The board quietly expanded the scope of the upcoming audit. Whispers spread through the company about Gerald's absence. Then came the email everyone had been dreading. Gerald Wilson would return to his duties the following Monday. That Sunday night, I received a text from a colleague. "Gee, cleared out your office today. All your stuff is in boxes at reception." So that's how it would be. No pretense, no process, just immediate retaliation. Monday morning, I arrived to find my keycard deactivated. Security called upstairs, and minutes later, Gerald himself appeared in the lobby. "I'm afraid there's been a restructuring," he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Your position has been eliminated." I nodded calmly. "I understand. I'd like to collect my personal items." "Already packed for your convenience," he said with a thin smile. "Marcy will bring them down." Several employees watched the exchange, looking uncomfortable but saying nothing. "Also," Gerald added, "I'll need your laptop. Company property." This was the moment I'd anticipated. The laptop contained everything: client files, communications, my work for the past 3 years. "Of course," I said, handing it over without hesitation. Though I should mention that all my current client work has been backed up to the secure server, as per company policy. Something flickered across Gerald's face. Doubt, perhaps. He hadn't expected me to surrender so easily. "Security will escort you out," he said finally. As I walked toward the exit, carrying my box of belongings, Danny appeared from the elevator. She gave me a subtle nod. Phase 1 complete. What Gerald didn't know was that I'd spent the weekend copying every relevant file, email, and document to an encrypted drive. The laptop he now held contained nothing he couldn't already access, and nothing that could implicate me in what was coming next. For the next 3 days, I waited in my apartment, jumping at every sound, expecting police, lawyers, or worse. Nothing happened. On Thursday, my phone rang. Lloyd's number. "Riley," he said when I answered. "Are you available to meet? There have been developments." 2 hours later, I sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office. Lloyd looked haggard, his usual polished appearance frayed at the edges. "Gerald has accused you of corporate espionage," he said without preamble. "Claims you stole proprietary information and client lists before your departure." I had prepared for this. That would be difficult since he confiscated my laptop, which contained all my work files. "He says you made copies." I backed up current client work to the secure server as required by company policy. I repeated my earlier statement. "Is that what he means?" Lloyd sighed. "He's pushing for legal action. Has the board split on the issue?" "And the audit?" I asked carefully. "Postponed." Gerald convinced enough members that changing auditors mid-investigation would be disruptive. Just as I'd feared, Gerald was reasserting control, eliminating threats, shoring up his defenses. "I see," I said, trying to hide my disappointment. Lloyd leaned forward. "But there's something else." The SEC received an anonymous tip about financial irregularities at Viewpoint. They've opened a preliminary investigation. My pulse quickened. I hadn't done that. "Any idea who might have sent it?" Lloyd asked, watching me closely. "None," I answered truthfully. After Lloyd left, I called Danny. "Did you contact the SEC?" I asked without greeting. "What? No. I wouldn't know how." She sounded genuinely shocked. "Was it you?" "No." This was unexpected. Someone else had spotted Gerald's scheme. "What does this mean for the plan?" Danny asked nervously. "We stick to it," I decided. "The quarterly client review is still on for Tuesday. Everything has to be ready by then." The next few days were a blur of discreet meetings and careful preparations. I met with Liz Anderson privately, sharing specific concerns about billing irregularities on her account. I contacted Tony and the others who had spoken at the board meeting, each conversation delicate, factual, focused. None of them knew the full picture. None of them knew exactly what would happen Tuesday, but each agreed to attend the quarterly review, citing concerns about recent management changes. Tuesday morning arrived. I dressed carefully in my best suit, not for a job interview or a date, but for war. The security guard at Viewpoint recognized me, but looked confused when I approached the desk. "Miss Marsh, you're on the no-entry list." I smiled. "Check the visitor log for today. I should be there as a guest of Liz Anderson from Anderson Dynamics." He checked, then nodded slowly. "So you are. She'll need to escort you up personally." 10 minutes later, Liz arrived in the lobby. "Ready?" she asked quietly. "As I'll ever be." We rode the elevator in silence. When the doors opened on the executive floor, Gerald was waiting, his face thunderous. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, blocking our path. Liz stepped forward. "Gerald, I invited Riley as my consultant for today's review. Given her intimate knowledge of our account, I felt it was appropriate. She's been terminated. She has no business here." "Actually," Liz countered, "our contract specifies Riley as our point of contact. Since you unilaterally changed that arrangement, we've engaged her independently to protect our interests." Gerald's face flushed. "That's a breach of her non-compete agreement." "I never signed a non-compete," I said calmly. It was true. In Gerald's haste to remove me, he'd bypassed several standard termination procedures. For a moment, I thought he might physically prevent us from entering the conference room. Instead, he spun on his heel. "This is noted," he snapped, storming away. Inside, the room was already half full. Board members, executives, and other clients milled about, tension thick in the air. Preston sat near the head of the table, smirking at me as I entered. "Daddy's going to destroy you," he whispered as I passed. I simply smiled and took my seat beside Liz. At precisely 10 a.m., Lloyd called the meeting to order. "Before we begin, I understand there's been some confusion about today's attendees. For clarity, clients are permitted to bring advisors of their choosing to these reviews." Gerald, now seated at the head of the table, looked ready to object but seemed to think better of it. "Our first agenda item," Lloyd continued, "is a financial overview of this quarter's performance." The CFO stood, launching into his presentation. Charts and graphs appeared on the screen, showing strong growth and healthy profits. Gerald visibly relaxed as the presentation continued without incident. When the CFO finished, Lloyd asked, "Any questions before we move on?" I raised my hand. Gerald immediately objected. "She's not an employee. She has no standing to speak here. I'm speaking as Liz Anderson's representative," I clarified. Lloyd nodded. "The chair recognizes Riley Marsh, representing Anderson Dynamics." I stood, heart pounding. "Thank you. I have a question about the financial overview we just saw. Specifically, about client billing practices." The CFO looked confused. "What aspect of billing concerns you?" "The discrepancy between contracted rates and actual charges," I said clearly. "For example, Anderson Dynamics Master Service Agreement specifies a rate of $225 per hour for senior consultant work, but they've been billed at $275 consistently for the past year." The room went silent. "That's..." The CFO hesitated. "There must be some misunderstanding. Perhaps a rate increase that wasn't properly documented." "It's not just Anderson," I continued. "Beacon Technologies, Meridian Solutions, Walker Industries, all show similar discrepancies." Gerald stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. Former employees with grudges aren't qualified to analyze our billing practices." "Actually," Tony spoke up, "we've had our finance team review all invoices from the past 18 months. The discrepancies Miss Marsh mentions total over $130,000 for Beacon alone." One by one, other clients nodded, confirming they'd found similar issues. The CFO looked stricken. I'll need to review these claims immediately." "While you're reviewing," I said, "you might also want to look into these." I placed a folder on the table. "Expense reports showing charges to client accounts for services never rendered." Gerald slammed his hand on the table. "This meeting is over. Security will escort Miss Marsh from the building immediately." "Gerald," Lloyd warned, "sit down. She was terminated for cause. She's violating company policy by being here." Actually, a new voice spoke from the doorway. "Miss Marsh is here at our invitation as well." Everyone turned to see two men in suits enter the room. "Jason Mitchell, Securities and Exchange Commission," the first man announced. "This is my colleague, Agent Thomas from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division." The blood drained from Gerald's face. We're here as observers today, Agent Thomas added, based on information received regarding potential financial improprieties. Preston stood, edging toward the door. I just remembered an important call. Please remain seated, Mr. Wilson, Agent Thomas said firmly. Everyone stay where you are. What happened next unfolded like a perfectly choreographed dance. The agents explained they had been investigating Viewpoint for months, prompted by irregular financial patterns flagged by banking algorithms. My anonymous tip hadn't started their investigation. It had merely accelerated an existing one. The folder I'd provided contained only the surface of what they'd already uncovered. Shell companies, falsified expenses, client overbilling, tax evasion schemes. Gerald and Preston were escorted from the building by 2 p.m. By 5 p.m., the board had named Lloyd interim CEO. By the end of the week, criminal charges were filed against both Wilsons. 3 weeks later, I received a call from Lloyd. The board would like to meet with you, he said, to discuss your future with the company. My future? I asked, surprised. I was fired, remember? About that, Lloyd replied. It seems your termination wasn't properly authorized or documented. As far as we're concerned, you've been on paid leave. I smiled to myself. What position did the board have in mind? Senior Vice President of Client Relations, with a seat on the executive committee. The position Gerald had held. The ultimate revenge wasn't just seeing him fall. It was taking his place, earning it through honest work and integrity, rather than manipulation and deceit. I'll consider it, I said. When I hung up, I looked around my apartment, the place I'd paced for countless nights, planning my response to an injustice that had threatened everything I'd built. The battle was over. Not because I'd planned some elaborate scheme, but because I'd simply brought the truth to light. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't what you orchestrate yourself. It's allowing people's own actions to reveal who they truly are. If this story resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe for more stories of justice and resilience. Have you ever witnessed workplace injustice or stood up against it? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else fighting their own battle today.